Hi everyone, today I want to talk about some fantasy series that I would like to read or that I think that maybe I would like to read. I don't know about you guys, but a lot of the time I have a lot of fun just looking for recommendations online and making lists of series or books that I'm interested in, even though I know I don't have time to start them anytime soon. I feel like that's probably pretty common among the kind of people who might be watching this video in the first place, but in general, I'm just a big fan of lists and making lists and planning what I'm going to do in the future instead of actually reading or doing anything right now. So today I'm going to go through a list of fantasy series that I would like to read. My criteria in this is very particular. These have to be series that I have never tried before. I'm not even going to let myself count series that I maybe started when I was younger or didn't get very far into, or have started but don't remember anything about. These have to be series that I have never tried at all. But just like I said, I think I started something like 3 series already in August, so I don't think I'm gonna get to any of these anytime soon, but this is a look at some of the things that I would like to read in the future. There's also one series that I feel like I really need to talk about in this video that breaks basically every single rule that I just made for myself, which is basically how these things work, right? I mean, isn't the point of making up rules so that I can break them? Probably. So the series that I want to talk about first is a series that I have started before multiple times, but not for many years, and that is The Wheel of Time. I know this is a big fantasy classic. I tried to get into it a few times when I was a kid and never got further than maybe I think I got into book 3. I can't remember if I ever finished book 3, but I tried this series at least twice and it just never worked out for me. But that was also a long time ago, so I feel like my tastes may have changed enough that I can appreciate it. My best friend is also on book 14, which is the last one, right? She's at the end of rereading The Wheel of Time right now, and I would say she's usually like a bit less of a hardcore fantasy reader than I am. So I feel like if she read and enjoyed, or mostly enjoyed, 14 books of The Wheel of Time, and they are big books, then it's really something that I need to give another shot at. And maybe now, as an adult, I have the self-discipline to force myself through the entire series. I think my biggest problem the first time I tried to read Wheel of Time, when I was probably 8 or 9, I'm guessing, was that I found it to be really derivative of Lord of the Rings. And for me, that just sort of turned me off because I was a really snobby kid. Now I know that, first of all, it was kind of intentional, like it wasn't really a ripoff, it was more of an homage, and the rest of the series doesn't stay that way, and that Robert Jordan kind of intentionally wanted to take all these different stories and mythology and ideas and combine them in kind of a specific way into his world. So I feel like I won't really be bothered by that so much if I try again, and I feel like I know a lot more about this series now and about what he was trying to do, but that was the problem that I had with The Wheel of Time when I was younger. So this is a series that I've been thinking for a while that I do want to try again. I've even bought the first 2 books during the last few months, but I am trying to reread the entire Cosmere by Brandon Sanderson right now, so I don't think I am going to probably read any Wheel of Time until, probably the end of 2020, like probably not until after I read Rhythm of War. Okay, so now I'm done breaking my own rules, and I will get into my actual list of fantasy series that I would like to read in the future that I have never, ever, ever, ever tried before. The first one is the Sharing Knife series by Lois, McMaster, Bujold. Bujold is one of my all-time favorite authors. The Vorkosigan Saga, her science fiction series, is probably honestly my favorite series. At least it holds a very special place in my heart, even if it's difficult to pick an actual favorite series. I also really love her books that are set in the world, I think it's called The World of the Five Gods. The first one is Curse of Chalion, and then it's Paladin of Souls. And then she has some other novellas and short stories in that world that I have not read, but I have read most of that series, but she has one series that I have never read at all, and that's the Sharing Knife series. It's also the work of hers that I've heard people talk about the least. I don't know if that means it's not as solid as her other work, because I feel like she's an author, like I've hardly read a bad book from her. I don't love every entry in the Vorkosigan Saga equally, but it's a very, very long series, and most of it is just fantastic. And I think Curse of Chalion is one of the best fantasy books I've ever read. But with the Sharing Knife, I don't know too much about it. I know there are 4 books. I know that it's set not in our world, but it's kind of a frontier society, and that it was inspired by North America and sort of like the wilderness and landscape of North America. And I know there's like a sensual romance, and that's pretty much all I know about it. Compared to her other books, I just haven't heard people talk about this one as much, but I'm just a huge fan of hers, so I feel like it's something that I should get to at some point. A series I've known about for years, and that's also seems to be very popular on BookTube, is The Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. I have the first one here, Stormfront, that I picked up recently at the used bookstore because I've been intending to read this series. I've heard a lot of people say that the first few in the series aren't as good and that it really hits its stride later on, which isn't necessarily what you want to hear when you're thinking about starting a series, especially because this series, I looked it up, it has something like 17 books, which is really a lot. Although, you know, it's not like Robert Jordan style sized books. But from what I know, this series is urban fantasy. The main character is Harry Dresden, and he's a wizard private investigator who solves sort of magical crimes or deals with the magical world. In general, I like that kind of detective story. I do like long-running series when the author is able to keep like a consistent level of quality, especially mystery series. A lot of times those are really fun. So I feel like this is something that I could end up really enjoying. It sounds like something I would like, but it's also something that for some reason I've never felt super compelled to pick up compared to other things that I could be reading. But on the other hand, I'm hearing so much about it on BookTube, and it seems like it's been consistently popular. So this is something that I would like to give a try sometime soon. And I feel like it's not going to be as much commitment as The Wheel of Time. For my Hugo Awards project, where I was reading the books that were nominated for this year's Hugo Award for Best Novel and Best Series, I read the first book in The Expanse, Leviathan Wakes. And one of the authors for that is Daniel Abraham, who has written The Long Price Quartet, and I have heard really, really good things about The Long Price Quartet, so that's a series that I'm feeling very interested in picking up. I don't know too much about The Long Price Quartet, other than that I think it's pretty broad in scope, and the books are set like pretty far apart in time, and I think it covers a lot of like political and cultural events. I've heard really good things about it though. This is a series that Alan at the Library of Alexandria has recommended really highly, so that also made me want to pick this one up. Also, when I was making my list for this video and making sure I had the names right, I found a really good review of the whole series, just sort of about what it's like, by Jo Walton at Tor.com. I really like both Jo Walton as an author, and also I like her writing about the genre. So I'm going to link that down below as well, because it gave me a good idea of what the series was going to be like and made me more excited to pick it up. The next series I'd like to try at some point is the October Daye series by Seanan McGuire. Seanan McGuire is an author I've really started to develop an appreciation for this year. I read Middle Game for the Hugo Awards project, which, you know, it was ambitious. I liked it okay, but I thought her writing was really, really good. And then I started reading her Encrypted series, which is urban fantasy and very funny and totally different than Middle Game. Now, I've only read one book of the Encrypted series so far, which I really enjoyed, and I'm planning to read another one this month, but that's already a pretty long series, so it's going to be a while before I have the bandwidth for another long urban fantasy Seanan McGuire series. But I think October Daye is probably her most well-known series. At least it was the one that I had heard of the most before. From what I know about it, this is another urban fantasy that has like a private investigator character. I think October Daye she's a like changeling fairy, so this deals with the world of fairy, and that there's some mystery involved, and it's set in San Francisco, which is probably one of my least favorite cities that I've ever been to. I looked it up, and this series is something like 14 books long as well, and there's like 10 books in the Encrypted series, so I really need to get through those before I can even think about starting this. But just based on the Seanan McGuire that I've read so far, I think this series should be really good fun. Another series that I've never really wanted to pick up, to be honest, but that I feel like I need to try to be a good fantasy fan is Malazan, Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson. This is a series, again, I've seen it around for so many years, and nothing about it really made me excited to try it. I think I've seen a lot of people I watch on BookTube who are trying it or struggling through it, and I haven't heard anybody say that they really love this series. But on the other hand, I know there are some quite enthusiastic fans of this series out there. Obviously, it is very popular. I know these are some very big, chunky fantasy books that are very description heavy and can be a bit of a struggle to get through, but that there are certain things that Erikson does really, really well. So I'm kind of curious now to try this series and see if it's something that I would like. I am also very, very apprehensive because it's something that it feels like a lot of people feel like they should read or need to read, and not so much something they're excited to read. So maybe it's just I haven't watched or known any people that are really fans of this series, but it also seems like people mention it a lot and it is really, really well known. And, to further my education, I should probably try it. Another series by an author I've read other stuff by is the Divine Cities trilogy by Robert Jackson Bennet. His book Foundry Side has been very popular lately. I read it, I think last year. I overall really enjoyed it. It was the only thing by him I'd ever read before, and I didn't expect that much going in, but there was a lot about it that I thought was really, really good. I ended up being surprisingly engaged by the characters. The world building and the magic system was actually pretty cool. And so I finished Foundry Side very excited. And then for me, there were just some plot things about Shorefall, the sequel, that just bombed for me. I think most people haven't been too disappointed in Shorefall. I think generally people are enjoying the series, and I'm definitely planning to keep reading that series. Book 2 didn't completely destroy it for me. I'm still going to read book 3. So overall, I have a pretty good impression of the author. It's just that series, I don't know, we'll see. But I liked his writing enough that I am definitely curious about the Divine Cities trilogy. The first one is called City of Stairs. From what I've heard, the main character is an older woman. Now, I don't know if that's older, like fantasy older, so over the age of 22, or if she's actually middle-aged. But I still think that's really cool. I think that's something that I would like to see more of in fiction. If you are looking for something like that, I think Paladin of Souls, the sequel to Curse of Chalian, is a really good example of a book about a woman over the age of 40 who is still doing things. One series I've seen mentioned a few places recently that sounds like something that would really appeal to me is the Greatcoats series by Sebastian de Castell. The first book is called Traitor's Blade. This seems to be a Three Musketeers in a fantasy setting kind of story. At least every single mention or review of it that I've seen has mentioned the Three Musketeers, and that is catnip for me. I have loved the Three Musketeers for my entire life, and I will watch or read anything Three Musketeers related. I even watched that really bad 2011 Three Musketeers movie that had nothing to do with the Three Musketeers and had Orlando Bloom as the villain, and they were trying to steal Leonardo da Vinci's airship plans or something. I even watched that one. So, just mention the Three Musketeers and I have to try this series. I don't really know if it's good or not, but that's enough for me. Before I wrap up this list, I want to mention a couple of series that got recommended to me by commenters on some of my recent videos that I thought sounded super interesting and that are also things that I'd like to check out. The first one is Tales of the Ketty Jay by Chris Wooding, which was recommended to me by RedEyedGhost. They recommended this as excellent fantasy for fans of science fiction and said that it has Firefly vibes. I actually loved the show Firefly, so that really appeals to me. It seems like it's about a band of dysfunctional airship pirates or something like that, which that sounds pretty good. I'm into pirates. I loved Firefly, so this seems like it could be a lot of fun. The first book is called Retribution Falls, if that sounds interesting to you as well. So this is one I'm looking forward to checking out when I get a chance. The other series that got recommended to me recently by a commenter was the Winnowing Flame trilogy by Jen Williams. The first book is Ninth Reign. This was recommended by Rod when I said that I'd been really enjoying non-traditional fantasy recently. From the descriptions I've seen, it seems like this is about a female protagonist who gets compared a lot to Indiana Jones, in which I think she's a scholar and an adventurer. And it seems like there's an alien invasion, but that this is also a fantasy setting. So this seems like a really interesting science fantasy or fantasy science fiction blend. So I'm excited to give this one a shot as well. Now, from looking online, it seems like this might only be available in the UK. So it might take me a little while to get my hands on it. But I think the premise sounds really, really cool, and the descriptions of it all sounded really good. So this one was recommended by Rod. So thank you to everyone who has recommended books, and I'm looking forward to trying them as soon as I can. So that's my list of series that I have never read any of, except for The Wheel of Time, that I'm looking forward to trying as soon as I have space on my TBR. And I would love to know what series you guys are excited about reading, or if there's anything else on here that I should be adding to my already pretty lengthy list of things I need to get to.